Hey there, welcome back to another episode of American Snippets. I am your co-host, Barb Allen. Here with us today is Tom Varano, and this is one of these funny stories about someone. It's a great lesson to us. We never know who we live around and amongst, and sometimes we can go miles and miles out of our way seeking some sort of inspiration or beauty and we turn around and discover it's been in our own backyard the whole time. And that's kind of how we feel about Tom Varano. When Dave and I traveled to Montana a month or so ago to support an organization, Heroes and Horses, we featured Micah Fink as one of our very first episodes. And there at this event, we were treated to a painting, a speed painting. I don't even want to say it and diminish its value because when I say it, it sounds less than it was, but we'll let Tom talk quick. He is a speed painter, performance artist who performs the most stunning, moving, powerful event that I have witnessed in a long time. And its sincerity is something that literally can stop a room full of people at all stages of intoxication even and pay attention, right? And become intoxicated by his work. Tom, we are so excited to have you here today. We can't wait to dig into your story of artistry and patriotism and chasing your dream and pursuing that and turning it into reality and the message you want to send across the country. Thank you so much for taking time out of your ridiculously busy schedule to speak with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You guys are amazing. And it is a funny story how we met. I mean, I literally put that event on doing the presentation that evening. And I come off the stage to kind of, get my bearings afterwards. And I stand next to Dave at the table. Mm-hmm. And he starts a conversation with me, and I turn around, and you're right behind me. So
we circled you like a pack of wolves.
Yeah, it was funny, and you even said that. You're not going anywhere. We're gonna just hold you here. So that was a lot of fun. And of course, that event was over the top amazing.
Yeah.
Such an honor to be in that room with our veterans.
Yeah, it was great. So tell us, we'll start quickly. I would ask you to do a much better job than I just did of describing what it is you do first,
Sure.
so people get a good sense.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a performance speed painter and inspirational speaker. So I travel around the country, K through college schools, and bring a program into these schools, following your dreams, living with passion. I paint famous faces in minutes. They normally take, 6 to 8 minutes to paint these. They're all set to inspirational music. So, for instance, if I'm painting JFK, it'll be to his speeches. If I'm painting MLK, it'll be to his speeches. Talk about Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa. I have about 50 different famous faces at this point in my repertoire. And then, of course, I'll do custom pieces of honoring at charity events or corporate events, honoring veterans. I'll paint their portrait live in a room full of people and just honor them. And it's changed my life. And it's I can't even put into words the emotions that I feel putting these events on for people. I mean, it's over the top.
Yeah. And so how did you get started in that?
Well, I've been a portrait photographer for 29 years. I still am. I run a studio in central New York and started my business at 14 years old. I mean, I could back up this story and,
please do. Literally, if you take us back to the time in your life when you first realized that you have this artistic pull in you, how you began expressing that, and like the very first brushstroke. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll share a story with you right now that is the pinnacle and the foundation of what I bring into the schools.
Please.
And it's over the top, unbelievable.
Okay.
So at 14 years old, my father walks into my bedroom and he hands me a camera. And he says, "Son, see what you could do with this camera." Never owned a camera before in my life. And so that summer I took the camera and I just studied photography, studied it over and over, fell in love with it. So as time went on, it's just my father and I living at the house, parents divorced and all that. Mm-hmm. I'm in high school. And in high school, I actually excelled at computer science. Just came easy for me. Back then, it was like Fortran and Cobalt languages, all these weird languages. So when it was time for me to go to college, I turned to my father and I said, Dad, it's time for me to go to college. I don't know what to study. And he says, Tom, you're great at computer science. I think you should study computer science. So I listened to him, enrolled in those courses, and about 2 weeks in, I'm sitting there in a cubicle writing code, and I absolutely hated computer science at the college level. I just did not like it. I have two passions in life. I love people. I want to be around people, and I love art. I want to create things. And at the time, I fell in love with photography, as I said. So I went back to my dad and I said, Dad, we have a problem. I said, I'm not liking computer science at the college level. I said, I want to make a change. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to study photography. I want to learn more about photography. I love photography. I have a passion for it. He said, let's make those changes. So I enrolled in those courses, and gosh, the professors, the teachers were teaching me things that my mind could never come up with on its own. So I fell in love even deeper with the science of photography. Started learning about lighting, started learning about different equipment, started learning about posing, started learning about how to critique a photograph, how to look at it and see what's right about it, what's wrong about it. So about a year and a half in, I went back to my dad and I said, Dad, I know what I want to do with the rest of my life. And he said, what's that? I said, I want to be a portrait photographer. I want to change people's lives with my camera. I want them to look at a photograph of themselves and say, wow, I am beautiful. I do matter. And he said, what do we need to do? I said, I need a studio, Dad. He said,
Oh my
look,
gosh.
Tom, he said, it's only you and I living here at the house. He said, why don't you take the two bedrooms down the hall? One will be your shoot room. The other will be your studio and your office. And our home telephone number, that's going to be your business number. I
Wow.
was 19 years old, and there I am in business, and changed my whole life. I mean, I was completely and utterly broke when I started.
We all
And about,
are.
yeah, 2 years in, I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. In fact, this year we celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary.
Yay, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So now we're completely and utterly broke together. Okay. We,
Perfect.
brand new marriage, but we were in love. It didn't matter. So, two things that we did when we first got married. And, I say this at all my events. I mean, you don't need a lot of money to be happy.
Yep.
Okay. So, we would go hiking. We live in central New York. So, we have the Adirondack Mountains. We would go hiking, canoeing, spending time with friends outdoors. And we found ourselves in church. And at this point in my talk with the students and at colleges, I say, look, I mentioned the whole church thing, but let me just make a disclaimer. And this is
Okay.
in my heart. I say, whatever your religion is, I say, study it, practice it, and live it out by loving other people.
Yep.
And that's my heart when it comes to the whole religion thing. But me, I believe in Christ and follow Christ's principles. So we're in church. And I'll never forget this moment, Barb, because this changed my life. The basket's coming around
Oh
church,
yeah,
and
that basket.
I'm sitting there in the pew with my wife, and my best friend from high school is on my right, and my wife is on the left. And here comes the basket. And as it got closer, I'm getting more and more frustrated inside because I had nothing in my pocket to put in the basket. And I just wanted to give back. I felt so blessed that, new marriage and, just I had my talent, I had my dream in front of me. I just wanted to give back. And here comes the basket. And without telling my friend or my wife, I looked down at my hand, and on my finger I had a gold nugget ring that my aunt had given me for my
Oh my
birthday.
gosh.
And it was my 12th birthday. It was my prized possession. I slowly took it off and tossed it in the basket. And the basket went on by with my ring. That was a Wednesday night. Come Saturday, that following Saturday, I'm photographing one of my first weddings. And I knew to do two things at the weddings: dress the part, so I wore a tuxedo.
Hmm.
And then the other thing I knew to do is use my God given energy to put people together and make people feel really good about themselves. So when I smiled, they smiled. When I raised my hands, they all raised their hands. And that's how the whole night was going. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the event, reception, this gentleman comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder. And he says, young man, he said, is this your business? And I said, yeah, I started this not too long ago. He goes, you love what you do, don't you? I said, I absolutely love what I do. And he goes, you could tell these people are having a great time. And so then, his wife interrupted, and he introduced me to his wife, Sue. His name was Lee. He said, "Look, Tom, you need to get back to work." He said, "Do you have a business card?" And I gave him my card. He gave me his. He said, "I see something in you that I don't normally see." He said, "I want to invest in you."
Wow.
I didn't know what he was talking about. Invest. So he said, "I'll be in touch with you." So he went his way. I went back to work. And towards the end of the night, I was looking for him, because I wanted to ask him a couple questions, but he had left early. So that was a Saturday night. Come Monday, I'm at my desk at my studio. Now I have my own studio, and I'm at my desk and I'm writing out, checks to my bills, and the phone rings, and it's this gentleman, Lee. And he said, "Do you remember me from the wedding?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you a question." He said, "What was your question?" I said, "You said you wanted to invest in me." I said, "Do you want to own part of my business?" And he started laughing. He said, "No, Tom, I don't need to own any part of your business." He said, "I manage $29 billion in New York City,
Oh my
and I don't
gosh.
need any part of your business." So he had my attention. In fact, there was silence on the phone. I started calling him sir at that point. And I said, "Well, what is it that you want?" He said, "I want to own a piece of your passion." He said, "I see that passion, and I don't normally see that." I said, "Well, I don't understand." He said, "Look, I'm not going to be in central New York anytime soon. Why don't you come down to Manhattan and I'll explain everything to you there?" And there was more silence on the phone. That was me at this point thinking, Barb, this
What?
stranger wants to get me to New York City so he could slice my neck open and throw me in some alley. That's what I was thinking. You know what I mean? I didn't know
Yeah.
this from anybody. So the first person that came to my mind was my father. So I thought, and I said to Lee, I said, "Do you mind if I talk to my dad?" And he snickered, and he said, "Absolutely, talk to whoever you want." He said, "But call me back." So I got off the phone with him, raced to my father's house. And at this point, my father, old time Italian, he was a screamer guy. Okay. So I get to the house and I tell my dad, I said, "Look, I said, I met this guy at a wedding, Dad. You're never going to believe this. This was Saturday night. I met this guy, and he said he wanted to invest in me. And I don't know what to do. He wants me to go down to New York City, and I don't know what to do." My dad screams at me, and he says, "Go see the guy." He screams, He's not going to hurt you. Go see what he has to say. So there's something when your parents or a loved one is behind you in a decision that you really want to
Yes.
do. There's more energy, more passion. I had that. So I race back to my studio. I get Lee on the phone and I say, "Lee, I have great news. My dad said I could come and see you." And he started laughing. He said, "That is great news." So there was no e-ticketing back then, Barb. This was
No.
1993. Okay. No e-ticketing, no internet. So, and I had asked him, I said, "Do you mind if I bring a friend with me?" Because I'm thinking adventure,
Mhm.
New York City, investor. I have no idea what's going to happen. So he says, "Absolutely, you could bring whoever you want." So he FedExed us 2 round-trip airline tickets to Midtown Manhattan. We get to JFK, we take a cab right into Midtown, 605 3rd Avenue, and we get out. And there's the building, Newberger and Berman Mutual Fund Company, all glass. Lee's on the 40th floor. We get up to take the elevator, get up to the 40th floor, doors open, and there's Lee standing there. Huge guy. When he shook your hand, your whole body shook. And so he goes, "Boys, follow me." So we follow him down this long hallway and then down this other long hallway. We get to the end, and it's a corner office, all glass, huge. He had all kinds of furniture in there. It was amazing. And we get in there. I put my stuff on his desk and went right to the windows. And I'm pressed right up against the windows. And people are this small down
Yep.
below. The Empire State Building is there. The Twin Towers are poised in the background. And I'm just taking it all in. And then he wakes me from my daydream. And he said, "Boys, come and sit down at my desk." So we sit down at his desk. He leans over the desk and points at me and says, "Tom, tell me about your life." So I proceeded to tell him about my new marriage, my business, all this. He cuts me off and says, "I have to invest in you. Did you bring the obligations I asked you to bring?" Now, on the phone, he had asked me to bring a snapshot of my life. "I want to know all about your wife. I want to know about your business. I want to know about your bills.
Mhm.
Can you bring all that with you?" And I had the envelope with everything in it. I hand it to him. He pulls everything out, puts it on his desk, spreads it all over. My whole life story is on his desk. And then he opens up his desk drawer, takes out his checkbook, and starts writing out checks to every one of my debts that day. $65,000 worth of debt. He's just
What?
writing checks. I got up, went to his side of the desk, and grabbed him by the wrist as he's writing these checks. And I said, Lee, I said, I so appreciate this. I said, but I can't pay you this back. I said, I don't make this kind of money. He said, this isn't about you paying this back. This is about you doing this for somebody in the future.
Wow.
I said, Lee, I'm a photographer. I don't make this kind of money to be able to do this. He said, this isn't about the money. This is about you helping others in the future and has nothing to do with money. Then he wrote me a check for $22,000. And he said, get this business off the ground. I see your passion. And then he wrote me a check for $26,000. And he said, go get yourself a reliable vehicle. Your servicing aren't you? You need to be on time. So that was my story with Lee. So I'm on my flight. Now this is where it gets crazy, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm on the flight back to New York, to central New York from Manhattan. My buddy is sitting a couple rows ahead of me, and I'm sitting in the airplane, and I'm thinking, how do you help people? Groups of people without using large sums of money. My commission from Lee, go help people. So a couple years down the road, I'm working in my studio, which is now located in the center of my city. And for the first time, I'm seeing people, kids, Barb, little kids playing on the streets all around my studio. And I remember calling one of them over to me. And I said, hey, man, I said, come on over here. I said, what are you, 8? What are you doing on the streets? He comes over. His name is Aaron. He said, yeah, I'm 8 years old. He said, we're bored. There's nothing to do. That's why we're out here. I said, Aaron, stay right there. I went into my studio down in the basement and I grabbed a rake and I handed it to him. I said, Aaron, see all these leaves around the studio? Rake up all these leaves. And I reached in my pocket. I had some 10s and 20s. I said, I'll give you some money. His eyes got this big. He started raking. About an hour later, he knocks on the door, opens the door, and there's Aaron just standing there with a big smile. Mr. Varano, I'm done. Can you come and check it? I went outside. There wasn't a leaf on the lawn. Whoa. He had picked up everything. So I reached in my pocket. I paid him, and he ran away. So then the next day, there's a knock on my door. I open the door. It's Aaron. Mr. Varano, is there anything else I could do around the studio? I said, absolutely, Aaron. Aww. See these weeds? Pull these weeds, and I'll pay you. So he did it. I paid him. Now this went on and on. Now Aaron's not 8. He's 14.
Wow.
Putting him in my truck, bringing him to my house.
Awesome.
It was just amazing. So now he's on my rider mower, mowing my lawn with a huge smile. He might as well
I love it.
Star in his mouth, And I'm in my swimming pool with my daughter, spending time with them. He's mowing my lawn. Well, this went on for some time. And then I lost track of him. I didn't know what happened to him. And this is where it gets crazy, because now my daughters, 2 daughters, beautiful daughters, they're in high school. And my oldest daughter gets in a car accident. She calls my wife and I. It's the worst call I ever got. She calls us. She's screaming, crying. And she just wants us at the scene. All we want to do is get to the scene. And we had to wait to get the address out of her because she was so hysterical. We finally get the address out of her. We race to the scene. There's paramedics. There's fire trucks, all this stuff. I push everybody out of the way, and there's my daughter's car. It's a crumpled mess. Airbag had gone off. She's still in the front seat. So I push people out of the way. I get into the front seat, and I'm face to face with my daughter. And I'm just telling her, Jordan, Dad's here. Dad's here. And there was hands stabilizing her neck from the back seat. And a face pierces around and says, Mr. Varano, she's going to be okay.
Oh, come on.
It's Aaron.
Oh, my God.
I'm an EMT. And he was the first one on the scene holding his neck. And I had realized at that moment, Barb, what Lee was talking about. Just being good to people, because you never know when it's going to come full circle.
Wow, that is a crazy story.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Changed my whole life. So I went on to run a very successful portrait studio, put my whole heart into it, live with passion, that kind of thing. Exactly what I talk about from the stage to the students. And, the most important thing for all of us, you included, is just finding something that we want to pour our lives in. and then just do it with everything we have. The people that I paint on
I love
stage,
it.
all famous faces, that's all they did. You take the Mother Teresa's. She wins the Nobel Peace Prize. She steps off the stage. And what does she say? Can I go back to the streets now?
Wow.
You take MLK, who's been shot at, his family's threatened, he's been imprisoned, he's been spat upon, and then he ultimately dies for his dream. And you and I, we get upset when our French fries are cold at McDonald's. You know what I mean? And these people
Yeah.
are living on the streets. They're living with passion.
That's I love everything you just said. I have some questions on that. First, out of curiosity, are you still in touch with Lee? Does he get to see what his investment turned into?
I was in relation with Lee for 13 years. I
Great.
met his whole family, and
Awesome.
I would take the train back to New Jersey where he lived. Sometimes being in the office, he flew me to New York City for 4 years, every single
Wow.
month, just to have lunch with me. And 3 years after he retired, he passed away to cancer.
Oh,
So it was cut short.
yeah.
But tell you what, the investment that he did make into me, I feel so obligated to my
Yeah.
own biological father and to Lee to just use everything that I've been given to just give back.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, you are a part of his legacy, which is
Absolutely.
super cool. I love it. Have you ever read the book, The Go-Giver?
I'm not sure. I don't think I have. No.
That story you just told me could have come straight out of that book. Could have
Is
come,
that right?
yeah, could have come straight out of it. I'm going to send you a copy. It's a great book
Okay.
and it's a very easy read. I'll totally send you a copy. Love it.
Okay.
It is a great book, and your story brings that book to life. The value, it's like the meaning is not to say, hey, what can I get out of this? What can I get out of this? But even when you are at your lowest point, you still have something of value to offer, and you should continue offering that. And it's by offering value that it comes back to you, tenfold. But if you are closed off and afraid to give or afraid to offer of yourself, that wall does not break open for you, to receive the blessings in return. And I love that. I love that story. That actually like got me. It's been an emotional 2 days here for me. So you got me a little vulnerable, but that story just put me a little over the edge. I love it. So thank you.
Say one more thing.
Yes.
The pastor of that church, that day that I took the ring off and I put it in the basket,
Yeah.
the pastor of that church 7 years later asked me to tell the same story I just told you. And I told the story. And then at the end, he comes out of his office with the ring.
Come on. I was waiting to see in that story if the ring was going to come back, if you were going to go to a photo shoot and somebody had the ring.
Yeah, they found it in the church basket, didn't know what to do with it. They put it in the church safe.
Wow.
And then gave it back to me.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I realized at that moment, for me, I'm talking for me, that you can never outgive God. If you give
Love
with
it.
the right heart, the right intention, the windows, just like the scripture said, the windows of heaven will be lifted, pour out a blessing that you cannot contain.
Love it. So how important was it for you to be open to making that leap? It's a scary thing when you say, I'm going to do this with my life, and then you feel like that's not what you're meant to do, to make that change when you've already publicly committed to one path to change to another. So how scary was that? And how important was it for you to have your dad's support there? Or what do you think would have happened if your dad had said, listen, you studied computer science, it's computer science, that's the way you need to go?
That's an extremely emotional question for me because I deal with thousands of students around the country that do not have their parents' support.
Yeah.
They're coming from broken homes, and these students come up at the end of the show and they're weeping.
Yeah.
Broken, because they don't have that foundation. My parents were divorced, and my father, all he did was pour into my life with what's the word? He would just encourage me all the time to try different things. You know what I mean? We weren't a wealthy family by any means. He was a disabled vet, so he broke his back in the service, and so he was living on a disability check. But he would just he bought the camera off of QVC.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? So that's what he handed me that day. And but he would always try basketball camps, do this, try this, scuba diving. He put me in flight lessons on his income. He put me in flight lessons. And it was just amazing. So you are absolutely right when you say the support of your father, because I could
Yeah.
have literally went to my dad and said, Dad, I want to do this. And him knowing if I had the passion behind it, he would have supported it.
Awesome.
And that's what I had with the photography. He's deceased, so he didn't see me pick up my brushes. But I knew that the brushes give me an opportunity to go to the stage and do something extremely unique, capture people's attention, and then use the microphone to speak into their lives. And that's what Emotion into Art is all about. That's the show.
Beautiful.
The
Yeah.
paintings are in my heart are secondary. The
Yeah.
microphone is why I'm there. It
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. And it is beautiful. And like I say to people, your performance, your presentation was so extremely powerful to me. And I go to a lot of events, I hear a lot of things. I speak myself. I know, so I know professionally how hard that is. And it's not necessarily something you can learn. You either have it, you can tell the people who believe in what they're saying and believe in the purpose versus the person who's getting up there to say the same thing, whose story has become kind of, even
Yeah.
if it was once emotional, is now their story and it's a profession and the passion has left them, right? And so
Mhm.
your presentation, it just like reached through the crowd and grabbed me. I had to actually walk away because I don't like getting emotional in front of people. And that's what was happening to me. And so I had to it just took me by surprise. And I will say this over and over and over again. And I mentioned before, I have been mentioning your name often, especially in the past couple of weeks in the circles I've been running in. So I hope
I
it gets out there and people see it and grab onto it, because what you do is not something that people often have access to and see. And so I love it. What do you say to kids in particular who don't have that support when they come up to you weeping, when they come up to you upset? Either their parent doesn't support them or they don't have a parent in the picture or they don't have somebody to support them. What do you say when they say, Mr. Varano, you had your dad's support. I don't have anything, anyone supporting me. How am I supposed to bridge that gap?
I believe in my heart 1000% that when I'm standing on that stage in front of 500 students or 2,000 students, lining the back walls in those rooms are teachers. And their dream
Yeah.
was to become a teacher. Okay. And I ask the students, I say, who in here struggles in school? Hands fly up all the
Yep.
time. And I said, you know what? That's real. You guys are being real right now. And school is hard. Life is hard.
Yeah.
School is hard. And I talk about bullying at the schools and how it's 10 times for for those kids that are getting bullied to be in school. You think your
Yeah.
life is hard. Try to get bullied and walk in fear and try to, do your work. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I tell the students, the teachers in your school, their dream was to be your teacher. And here you are struggling. And you probably pick up your books at the end of the day and run out so you can get on Facebook or you can get on Nintendo or whatever you're playing these days. And these teachers, all they want to do is see you get to the next level. They're the ones that believe in you. They're the ones
Awesome.
who want to get you to the next goal that you have,
Awesome.
to succeed. So I always put them back down the teachers.
I love it. I love it. We have 3 of my sisters are teachers, and someone very near and dear to us whose family is a teacher, and they would all do that for their students. So I love that. So moving forward, when did you then pick up a paintbrush and decide to move from photography in terms of your speaking, your public presentations? When did you decide to incorporate painting, and how did you just naturally have that talent, or did you
It's
have
a
to
great
learn it?
question. It's twofold. Number one, I told you the story about Aaron
Yeah.
and meeting Aaron. But the other thing I did is I went to the local athletic director in my city and I said, what's going on with the high school on Sunday nights? And they said, nothing, there's no events. I said, can I get the high school gym on Sunday nights? And they said, absolutely, you can come in, just sign the paperwork and come on down. So I used my insurance policy for my studio to be able to get this gym, brand
Wow.
full facility. So every Sunday night, they asked me how long I wanted it for. And I said 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. What's the duration? I said, can I get it for a year? They said, absolutely. For 20 years, I ran a basketball program on Sunday nights and as an outreach to the community to get guys in off the streets, 16 and up, to come in and just play hardcore basketball.
Wow.
The only recommend the only thing that they had to do, okay, requirement was no cursing, swearing on the court. Okay, check your pride at the door, and they had to stay for a 10-minute devotional. And that's where I would try to give back at
Mhm.
that point. So for 20 years, I did that. And in the midst of that, somebody had come up to me, an old friend of mine had come up and said, "Hey, have you ever painted before?" And I said, "No, I'm a photographer." I said, "I don't even help my wife paint the walls in our house. I don't like being dirty type deal." And they said, that's funny, but watch this video. And it was a gentleman by the name of Denny Dent. He's deceased now, but he used to speed paint. He used to throw paint around, put paint in his hair. He was a freak, really, with paint. He was an awesome, awesome guy. And but he was just on fire for painting, speed painting. And when I saw that, Barb, I fell in love with it. I was like, I want to do that. So this is what happened. My little family and I lived above my studio, 100-year-old building, beautiful building. We lived above our studio. So one night after dinner, I called him down. I said, "Hey, can you come down and watch this?" Turned on the music, started painting. I flip it over, and there wasn't a sound in the room. They were completely and utterly embarrassed for me because it did not.
I thought you were going to say, and there it was, this beautiful,
Yeah,
like behind you. Yeah.
no, it did not come out at all. And my wife comes over and she says, "Maybe you could do this or change this." And it just wasn't helping because it just did not come out. So for the next 4 months, and I was embarrassed because I just wanted to do this. It was a passion for me, but it didn't come out. So for the next 4 months, I went down in my studio and just painted. And I'm just throwing paint and I'm wrecking my studio. I paint all over my equipment, my ceiling, everything. So I called a friend and I said, "Hey, can you come over to the studio?" He works with masonry, Angelo Carletta, and he comes over. We dug out in the basement, dirt floor, 100-year-old building, dug out 4 ton of rock and dirt. Then we pour concrete in this pit, put stairs, and I have a painting pit in my studio basement.
I
And I
love
went down
it.
for 3 months and just practiced over and over and over again. And then I called my girls back down again after 4 months. And they said, "Just come and watch this." And my daughters, they're teenagers now, reluctantly came down. "Dad, it doesn't come out, Dad." "All right, no, please, just one more time." So they came down, turned down the music, flipped it over, and I got it. And my wife started crying because I had just taught my daughters that if you persevere, if you go after what you truly want to do, there's no stopping you.
Yeah.
The only one that could stop you is you. And I stopped the basketball program and I took my brushes and I take the program on the road. And it's not a religious program at all.
No, it's
But
not.
I talk about my faith
Mm-hmm.
because it's the foundation of my life.
Sure.
But I don't push it on anybody. I just talk about them being all in, like Nelson Mandela was all in. Okay, in his 70s, spent 20 years in prison, and in his 70s, his dream didn't die in that prison. He comes out and becomes president. MLK, JFK, Mother Teresa, Walt Disney. The list goes on and on
Yeah.
and on. Of all these great people. What was the foundation of it? They went all in. They didn't deviate. They put blinders on and just did it.
Yeah.
And that's really what you and I need to do.
Yep.
We got to be passionate about what we're doing. We got this short time on this
Oh,
earth.
I know. I know. Yep.
And then we just go all in.
It's great. Great, great, great. I love, and I always say when I get to speak to people like you who have that mindset and the mentality, I love it. Sometimes I feel like I'm getting away with something because I get to, ring you guys up and have this conversation and I get to surround myself with people like you. It's so important to surround yourself with people who believe that, the power of proximity is something we talk about often, like who you surround yourself with, the mindset that you surround yourself with is, you go where you look, right? And yes. And so I love everything you're saying falls exactly 100% into, why we started American Snippets and why we find people like you with these stories and this message to get across, because there's so much negativity in this country today. And it seems like there's in everybody's life, there are a lot of people who have all these answers as to why you can't succeed at what you're doing, why what you're doing is crazy, why they kind of laugh at it. And they all come from their own place and have their own reasons for saying that. And
Yes.
I love being able to have somebody come in and say exactly what you're saying, because the drum beat, we're trying to reverse that drum beat, so they hear more of the beat of success and
And it
mindset and go.
starts with our youth.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
Yeah.
we're, I was at this event in Albany, New York, this past weekend for our veterans,
Yeah.
and Karen Vaughn, just like you, Gold
Uh-huh.
Star mom, Gold Star wife, Gold Star mom, and she's up there. We presented a painting to her of her son Aaron, who lost his life in 2011, Afghanistan, and she said something from the stage. She said, "We're only one generation away from losing our freedom here in America. We
Yeah.
take it for granted sometimes, but we're only one generation away from losing the dream." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
for us to go, if we succeeded in any way, for us to go out and pull up, reach down and pull up the next generation to say, you can do it. You have what it takes. Just like Lee did with me.
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be today. You know what I mean? I wasn't great at school studies. I didn't have a mom that read books to me. You know what I mean? So I kind of struggled in school. I don't know where I would be, but my father believed in me. Lee believed in me. My wife believes in me. I don't know where I would be without that support. And
Yeah.
all I want to do is be an advocate for that type of support.
I love it. Love it. So tell me about your very first event where you incorporated painting into your speaking.
It was an actual school event, and well, my very very first painting was for the guys at the basketball. That was
Love
my
it.
first public.
What was the picture?
It was of Christ,
Perfect.
and it
So
was amazing.
I love this image. You have all these these youths, right? And you have them coming in to play basketball, so they're sweaty and and just want to play basketball, and you somehow managed to get them to come in to listen to you speak and to paint a picture of Christ.
Yes,
And they did what? Were
the program started with 3 people showing up the first year. By the end
perfect.
of the program, we had 60 guys showing up
Wow.
every single Sunday night.
That's
And
amazing. If you accomplished nothing else in your life, right? If that is what you did with your life and your central theme, that would still, like, that in itself is so powerful and so impactful. That's extraordinary. I
I
love it.
I need to share this with you.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
This is huge.
Yeah.
All right. And I mentioned this from the stage. You remember the movie Apollo 13?
Yeah, oh yeah.
You remember, okay, in the beginning, if you have to think back in the beginning of the movie, Tom Hanks, they're all at his house. They're having this party because of the landing on the moon,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Having this big
Yeah.
party. And then they're all cheering him on, finally landing on the moon and all this stuff. So then everyone leaves the house, and it's just him and his wife, Marilyn. And the house is destroyed, glasses everywhere, and dirty dishes. And they go out back, and they said, "Let's just sell the house." They were just,
Yeah.
clean up all this mess,
Uh-huh.
right? So they're laying out back, and they're looking up in the starlight, and they see the moon. And Tom Hanks turns to his wife. Remember, he was doing this with his thumb, and he turns to
Yeah,
his
yeah.
wife and says, "We now live in a world where man has gone to the moon." And then he turns back to his wife, and he says, "It's not a miracle. We just chose to go." And just
Yeah.
like you and Dave are
Yeah.
choosing to do this program, and I'm choosing to pack my bags and go around the country and paint live for people, there's so many of us that are just choosing to go. And that's the power of having a
Yeah.
dream. And I talk to the students that we have to handle our dreams with kid gloves because it's so fragile. People take dreams for granted, but we have to handle them with kid gloves.
Absolutely. And on that theme, we talk a lot at American Snippets about the American dream. This is, one of the tenets of why we do what we do, and largely in line with what we've been speaking of, that we're told so often that the American dream is a fallacy, it's a myth, it's a fantasy, it's dead, and people, especially in families like mine, who have felt the big impact of what it takes to
Absolutely.
maintain the opportunity for us to pursue those freedoms. I believe in the American dream. I teach my kids it's still alive, and I teach them it's our duty to pursue it, right? Because so many have given so much that we can. But I would love to hear from you. When I say to you, Tom Varano, what does the American dream mean to you? How would you define that?
I would say faith, hope, and love.
Perfect.
If we lose those, I think we've lost our dream. Faith,
Yes.
hope, and love. And that's what this country was built on, is faith, hope, and love. And that's what people like your husband have died
Yeah.
for that.
Love
That's
it.
the dream of America right there.
So if there was one person that we could call up today and send to you, as somebody in the entire world who you've never met, we could call up and send over to your house right now to spend the afternoon with you. You could talk about whatever you wanted to talk about. Who would that be?
I would say Donald Trump.
Love it. He's fascinating, right?
He's fascinating, but
Yeah.
I would tell him my story. And I would tell him, I'm sure that man has similar stories that he's done for people. We see the Donald Trump that's been, created from the
Right.
television series and everything else that he's had to do. And a lot of that comes out in his public speaking now. But I believe we needed him at this point in our country. I really do. I feel like the changes that are being made were needing to be made. But faith, hope, and love, I would talk to him about. To not create the tension,
Yes.
because that's not what America was built on. Is to create this tension where we're all on the same team here.
Right.
Let's pull together and advocate for that. And the tension, let's just put it in the corner where it belongs. Shut it down. Just shut down that tension.
Yes, that would be lovely, wouldn't it?
You know what I mean?
Yes. It would be lovely to have that all go away, which is another reason we're trying to be a louder voice than all that nonsense going on. This is our way of coming back against it. I'm like, let's stop feeding that and let's feed a different message instead, which is, and you are a part of that message here with us today. So we love it.
Our students, you know what I mean? They're watching us. They're watching how we act. They're learning. Our kids are so pliable.
Yes.
And they mimic what we do and say and act like. And all I wanted to do was be like my father growing up. And all he wanted me to do is not be like. He was married 4 times, Barb. He lived a hard life.
Yeah.
And he was my hero. But when he looked at himself, he felt like a failure. And he didn't want me to be like him. You know what I'm saying? And all I wanted to do was be like him. But now I've taken the bad parts and I put him in that corner. Yeah. That's why this year I'm married 25 years. That's my biggest accomplishment.
That's awesome. That's a blessing, really. Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so happy for you. And I know you have to go, so we'll wrap this up with another big thing. If people want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they do that?
Emotionintoart.com. And, my name is Tom Varano, Varano. And
if they want to book you to come out and do an event?
Yeah, they can contact us right from the website.
Perfect.
K through college schools, corporate events, charity events. We'll be the entertainment at a charity event and help them raise money, just like we did in Montana. Was that unbelievable? The paintings brought in $60,000 from the stage that
God.
$60,000.
I mean, it's just amazing. And I would fly across the country to go to another event of yours. If I see it come up on my calendar, I had the opening, I'd be there because it's so worth it. And I cannot emphasize enough to anybody listening how worth it would be for you to go to Tom Varano's website and check out what he does. And when you have an event, when you need somebody to come in and speak, if you want somebody who's going to actually move the people in your audience instead of just having them sit there dutifully listening, you want somebody who's going to, you tap into emotion and the rest is yours to work with, right? And you do that so beautifully. So thank you so much for taking the time, for all you do, and for taking the time to spend with us today. We really appreciate it.
Barb, thank you. And thank you for, your sacrifices that you've made with your family. We can't thank you enough. And you and Dave are doing a wonderful job with your program, and just keep it up.
Thank you. Right back at you.